Not gonna lie, I'm not sure what to do for the cold open.
I was hoping you would just sit there silently for another 30 seconds.
Just they turn the podcast on in silence.
It's like you ever do that when you talk to somebody on the phone and you're just trying to screw with them. You just have them sit there and say hello for 30 seconds.
No, I don't do that because I am very Spartan and utilitarian in my phone calls typically.
Yeah, fair enough.
If I have to talk on the phone, let's get what needs to be said, so I can hang this thing up.
We used to have phone calls with our cousins, and we would sometimes do that to one another, where we'd try to get each other to hang up because we thought the other one had lost connection or something. But yeah, it was it didn't work for very long because it's a fairly easy bit to see through.
Mm-hmm. Or hear through.
Yeah.
To audibly see through.
Audibly see through. I mean, your eyes are catching waves, and so is your ears.
Just in vastly different frequencies.
True. This is true.
And
biology was like, ooh, the wiggly things. Let's make organs that sense the wiggly things and interpret them.
all of nature is made up of wiggly things.
Yes. All wiggly things, great and small.
The Lord God made them all.
Except the wiggles.
If he didn't make them, who
did not
did?
make the wiggles.
The alternative is frightening.
It's like some of that, was that the Apocrypha or whatever, because there's like, what was it, some weird crap with like Adam's first wife Lilith or something, where it's just like all this completely made up weird stuff that like occult people are really into. I don't know. Just have this.
I tend not to pay too much attention to it.
Yeah, I mean, a certain guy who lit his face on fire. Oh, maybe that's too specific. But there's some interesting conversations that happened with said individual. He didn't intentionally light his face on fire. It was an accident, but we won't go into that or who this person is.
Unless he decides he wants to come on the podcast at some point.
I'm going to have to say that's improbable.
Yeah,
it is improbable.
That would be a wild ride.
Twould be.
Because, I mean, there's equal chances that it would be a totally normal conversation or just complete chaos. And I don't know if I'm ready to, like, deal with either of those two possibilities being a reality. Anyway, you're coming...
Here's Wonderwall.
What's that? Yeah. Anyway, here's Wonderwall. Anyway, here's Freebird. So I guess
what part of
25 rats on a plague boat in the 1300s.
Have you been seeing the new developments in the spinning rat memes?
I saw the plague rats on a boat in the 1300s.
The RTX on spinning rats.
Oh, there's RTX on spinning rats now.
I need to see that.
I'm just going to. What are you gonna make adjustments? You turning me down?
A little bit.
Don't. No.
There we go. But yes, no, I have not
now.
seen RTX on rats, but that seems to be the natural development of a 3D meme.
Indeed, because the original was like very potato PlayStation 1 kind of rat, right?
Well, yeah, that was part of the humor of it.
Right. Mm-hmm. But then taking something that low poly and then over detailing it, I can imagine has some interesting results in the...
It's really just like a more, modern 3D bundled rat.
Oh, it's just a...
I contend that the greatest RTX on meme I've yet seen is Morshu RTX on.
Oh, of course.
Because that animation is so ridiculous and extreme, and the art style is so ridiculous and extreme.
Like hyperbolistically, that's not a word, but like so exaggeratedly high definition.
Right. It's high definition without like...
You're slightly uncomfortable looking at it.
Well, it's like Uncanny Valley on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Where it's like, yes, this cartoonish large fellow is overly detailed right down to his pores.
Yep.
And That's what's funny about it.
His
Like,
pores stretch like
the-
a real person.
like the mustache coming directly out of his nose, like the original has, is just kind of creepy on a super realistic model. It's great.
Yep. But speaking of ray tracing, actually, I have absolutely nothing to do with ray tracing. Riley, you're coming to the end of IPF. How's that?
Yes, I am. It is a bittersweet time
I
because there's all
imagine.
these fun new friends we've met over the summer that we're gonna have to say goodbye to.
Is there
2
anybody you had
days.
known previously, or is it all just a new batch of people?
There were a couple of people I had known.
Okay.
Yeah, 2 here that I knew before I came. One of them being my diocesan brother, so
Ah.
that barely counts.
That's sort of expected that you know each other, or at least quite the most likely of all the
Yeah,
possibilities.
but Josh knew a bunch of people from his seminary, so
I see.
I got introduced to that whole group of people. So I
Yeah, because I
became-
suppose he went right out of high school, didn't he?
yes,
Okay. And was this another deal where there's priests from all over, or not priests, but like seminaries from all over the country go to IPF, more or
yes,
less?
this is correct.
So I suppose by the time this episode goes up, you will have been back in town for a little bit.
Yes, and then I will have already left town again.
Yep. Where are you? Oh, because you're going to Denver, right?
Yes, that's right.
For the annual visit.
Mm-hmm.
More or less annual. I mean, it's pretty much been annual. I don't think you missed a year, have you? Or what about 2020?
Here and there.
I mean, recently.
Not for a couple of years now. Yes, COVID, of course, I didn't get to
Right.
go out and visit,
Mhm.
but yeah, I went 2019, 2021,
But yes,
so
I took this week off of work. It's been interesting. I told myself I was going to try to be like super productive, which did not happen. I mean, although I have gotten close to done on this wedding project, which was one of my main goals, but today I was like, I'm on vacation. I work on computers all the time. I need a break. So I took a break today and instead started helping my little brother move into our house today. So made a trip to the hardware store, which is always fun because apparently none of the screws and brackets to put his bunk bed together were apparently part of the original thing in the first place.
Oh,
And so we just had to get our own hardware for it. So I think it'll work. We'll find out. But
you're
Will
not
he be
sleeping in
indeed
it, so.
inhabiting the basement, or is he inhabiting
nope,
the large room?
he's squeezing into the room I share with Bryant currently. So it's going to get nice and crowded in there
Interesting.
again.
Because there's no egress window in the basement, and the city people would frown upon us if we did.
We will be very, very angry with you.
They would be quite cross with us.
And rather, I will be the basement dweller because I don't officially live there.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Precisely. I mean, yeah. So, otherwise it's been nice just kind of hanging out. We've been playing the crap out of 7 Days to Die, as Riley is well aware.
Mm-hmm. I stayed up altogether too late with them last night.
Yep. And
We had 7:30 mass to boot, which is earlier than our normal.
Mhm.
So
yeah, we
it was
took a
little
break.
groggy.
We took a break for you to go do evening prayer, and then you came back and we played for another 4 hours. So that's the thing about that game. I didn't play it for like 3 months after from Lent until like June, and then Bryant wanted to play it again, and now we've just been like going hard at it. It's easy to sink into for me.
Yeah, I don't have the 7 days, and so I have not been participating. What I have been doing is trying out the open beta for Multiverses,
Oh, that's right.
which, for those who don't know, Multiverses is a platform fighter in the style of Super Smash Brothers,
By Warner Brothers.
but with Warner Brothers' owned characters.
But with Ultra Instinct Shaggy.
With Ultra Instinct Shaggy and the Iron Giant, and I think my main is Velma. I
Yeah.
have a little bit too much fun with her.
From what I've seen, there's a lot of people using Velma lately.
Well, she's silly.
Yeah.
Like, she's not like the top tiers. If you want to see a top tier, watch the Game of Thrones lady or probably Shaggy.
Yep.
But, like, Velma's just silly. She's got a move where she runs in place with her arms outstretched, and then when you let go of the button, she just zooms and picks up everybody in her path.
Wow. And she can call the cops on people, apparently.
Yep, you get enough clues and you can call the cops on people. It's great.
Oh, boy.
But, like, also there's some... I haven't unlocked all the characters because you need to... It's a free-to-play. So you need to play a bunch so you get the coins so you can unlock the guys. Or pay money, which, like...
Free-to-play, pay-to-win model.
Not
necessarily.
all, like, the things that require... real money are like aesthetic things like the extra skins and stuff, but like I kind of also want to unlock Tom and Jerry. I tried them out in training mode, and dude, it's so funny. All their animations are great because the way it's framed is the entire time Tom is trying to whack Jerry, but
he ends up whacking other people.
Yeah, so
wow,
like
okay,
it's
so it's like a reverse of Duck Hunt.
Or like the Rosalina and Luma from Smash Bros. Where it's kind of that puppet character type of thing where you can like throw Jerry in a slingshot across the stage and then throw tennis balls at him, but he'll racket them back. And if people get caught in the crossfire, they can take damage. It's so good.
Nice.
So there's a lot of like polish that went into it. And like I'm enjoying it. I'm
More
trying
effort than you would have expected for what's essentially a brand integration.
Which is kind of what that genre needs to be successful.
Yeah.
Because if you want to match...
It's not really about the fighting game itself. It's about playing as your favorite character, beating up somebody else's favorite character.
And that's the thing. If you want to step to something like Smash Bros., which does a lot of the characters very faithfully and has all these references and has all of this history to it, in addition to being a solid fighting game, you have to put just as much effort to make each character unique and feel like they're the character. The one thing I haven't been able to do is this game is geared toward 2v2s, so I haven't been able to play. Well, I haven't decided to because I don't want to play on a team with a rando online.
Yeah,
but I also, but I also know people here would be a tough sell to get the game and play it with me.
I guess it is
cooperatively
free
even.
to play.
It is free.
That would mean learning the game.
I mean, there's a training mode and.
Fair enough.
I can be nice teaching a game to somebody.
One free-to-play game I keep forgetting to boot up is that what's it called? The Aperture Labs one. What was it?
Oh yeah, Aperture Desk Job.
Yep.
Haven't played that one yet, but I love Portal, so I should have played it by now. But
yeah, I just keep forgetting
the one
about
that
it.
they made for the Steam Deck.
Yep.
Yeah.
But if you have a controller, you can play it. So I'll probably sit down and play it one of these days. But let's see I saw there's this YouTube channel I watched where they do like visual effects and different things like that, and they decided they were going to challenge themselves. So they made 3D scans of themselves, and in Unreal Engine they made a Smash clone.
Oh,
where they were playing as themselves, whacking each other.
That's great.
It looked really goofy. They had like a whole 3D scan of their studio too, so like the stage.
They made the stage.
Yeah, the stage was their office.
That's
and
great.
they were whacking each other. I was like, oh, okay, that'd be pretty fun.
More and more recently, there's been a lot of people trying their hand at a platform fighter.
Yeah,
there was that Nickelodeon one that released late last year. Obviously, there's like Rivals of Aether, which was made by people who are making Melee mods and fan games, and decided, you know what, let's make our own platform fighter that's closer to what Melee was, and that's what that is.
It's interesting how like what Smash Bros came out the first one and what was that
might have been
on,
like 99
N64?
or 2000. It was on 64.
Yeah, that's been up for over 20 years, and now people are starting to like make it a trend.
Right. Well, the first three were kind of like Nintendo doing their thing, and it's not like there haven't been people trying to step to that before. I mean, there was PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale.
Oh boy.
Which I have heard
which is
not that great, but I kind of want to play it because you can fight Parappa the Rapper with Big Daddy from BioShock.
Oh, well, oh. Oh, that is weird.
Right? They also got like old school Kratos from God of War, and they got Nathan Drake, and they got those stuff. And then just in there, they unfortunately didn't get to use like Crash or Spyro or Lara Croft, any of those classic PS1 characters.
Because of the franchises and so forth. But
yeah, but that's what I want to try someday, but I'd have to have a PS3.
Yeah.
Now, with the recent trend with multiverses and Nick All-Star Brawl and with Smash Ultimate over, I kind of want to see PlayStation try it again.
Yeah.
That would
they
be
might be able to get away with it. Like, I imagine playing like Arthur Morgan versus Kratos and PS4 Spider-Man. That'd be weird.
It would be weird, but hey, it'd
I'd
be
be-
fun to throw dynamite at Spider-Man.
Yeah, boy.
Boy. Have that just be one of his taunts, one of his animations. Like,
Boy.
have his son do some things from off stage as like an assist.
There's the God of War Ragnarok. It's coming out soonish?
Yeah, that's still. I don't know when that is.
Yeah, I do know that
Like this year and next.
the first game, the first of the remake. Well, not really remake, more of a reboot. It seems like it's still
A
coming out.
reboot, cool.
Yeah,
Because the first 4 were like hack and slash beat 'em ups, like your Bayonettas or your Devil May Cries.
Mm-hmm.
But then like they went the more cinematic, over the shoulder, every other PlayStation first party game thing with 5, or the one that dropped the number and called itself God of War again.
yeah. If it goes on sale on Steam at some point, I'll probably pick up Dad of Boy and give it a try. But definitely, if whenever Spider-Man goes on sale on Steam, I'm definitely picking that game up because that looks like a lot of fun to play. But
Also, I need you to either record or stream like Spider-Man 2 for GameCube.
oh, yep, we'll put that on the list.
At least get to the point where you can do a pizza mission.
Yeah. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen.
Cue
Speaking-
out of tune funicula.
One of the kids at the high school I work at can sing that like really, really well. He's just a super talented opera singer. But speaking of recording and streaming, we are the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I am Nathan.
And I'm Riley.
There's streaming stuff in the works. Stay tuned. I've been saying that for a
Probably
while.
a different platform altogether. I don't think we stream on Spotify. I mean, you can stream the show on Spotify.
Yeah.
I suppose that's how that works.
Yeah.
But we're talking other things. Anyway,
But yeah, we're doing a philosophical this week on Taika Waititi's Jojo Rabbit.
In a world where one man will decide whether to pull a lever and kill one man, or not pull a lever and allow 5 people to die, find out in Philosophical.
So yes, Jojo Rabbit came out, I believe, 2019.
I don't remember what year it came out. You're supposed to be the one.
Double check.
Yes, it is 2019.
Okay, I remember it being rather recent.
Yep. Is to the top question on Google's, is Jojo Rabbit disturbing? It's like
I mean, we'll
it
answer
depends on
that.
how you look at it. So okay, so it's a sort of dark comedy taking place in like
World War II Germany.
yeah, like the later
Toward the end of the
stages.
war.
Yeah, later stages of World War II, vaguely, in some town in Germany. So there's a young kid named Johannes Belzla, I believe, who goes by Jojo for short, and he's about 10 years old, and at the time he was in the Hitler Youth, and he's a rather exuberant, enthusiastic little Nazi, and his imaginary friend is Hitler himself.
Played by Taika Waititi.
Yep, that's sort of this over the top, like imaginary friend, you would assume.
Supportive best friend Hitler.
Yep. And so he's going out to these Hitler Youth activities, which is sort of a mimicry of like the Boy Scouts in America. They do things, but everything's oriented towards forging them into soldiers that can fight for Germany. So they're doing things like, building campfires, telling kids to kill rabbits,
Throwing grenades.
shooting
Guns.
throwing grenades. Jojo got a little too enthusiastic trying to prove himself because he got called a rabbit because he was too scared to like kill a bunny to show how much he loves
Hitler gives him a pet talk. Well, the rabbit is a wise tactician. He knows when to run, and he's clever and he's sneaky, and so be the rabbit, Jojo. And so he's like, yeah, be the rabbit. He throws a grenade and it blows up in his face.
Yep. It bounced off a tree and then lands right back in front of him. So the this injured war veteran is leading the Hitler Youth because they won't let him go back into the field, and he's kind of bummed about it. And he's like, oh, great. His mom is going to kill me. So Jojo gets taken to the hospital, and he's all kind of scarred up and stuff from the whole experience. And so his mother is indeed furious at the commander for allowing this to happen to her kid. So she takes him home to recover and stuff after he's been in the hospital for a while. And his mom is played by Scarlett Johansson. And so we learn, his mother is like, his dad is off fighting in the war, and his mother is doing the best she can to take care of him and support him and so forth on her own. And we sort of get the impression that she's kind of doing some other things that Jojo's not completely aware of. But once he's recovered enough, Jojo's sent back out, but not back to the Hitler Youth. He's sent to sort of be an errand boy for the local, war office in their town. The march of the Allies onto Germany is becoming more and more imminent. The Soviets in the East and the Americans and British and French in the West. So you sort of get the sense that things are slowly coming to a close in the background. The jaded commander, well, he's very jaded from his experiences, but also he's like, this whole Germany thing is pointless. But Jojo, being the enthusiastic little Nazi boy that he is very exuberantly like, of course we'll win the war. So as time goes on through the movie, Jojo comes back home one day a little earlier than his mom, and he hears a noise upstairs. So he goes upstairs into his deceased older sister's bedroom where the noise came from. It was, her past, it was sort of implied she died of illness or something like that. Her name was Inga. So like a lot of her stuff is still in the room and just kind of kept exactly the way it was when she was alive. But Jojo discovers a secret crawl space in the walls of the room, and inside the crawl space is this young, fair 17-year-old Jewish girl. So it turns out that's what his mom has been up to, is sort of hiding her and shielding her from the Nazis. And she, recognizing, Jojo's like Hitler Youth getup, is like, I'm going to kill you if you give me away. And even if you do give me away, I'm going to say you and your mom both helped me, so you're going to be in just as much trouble as me if you rat me out. Also, if you tell your mom that you know that I'm here, I'm going to kill you too. So they sort of have this sort of tense pact between them.
Mexican stalemate.
Yeah, that's not what that's called, Jojo. Over time...
and of course, Jojo goes back to his room, and Hitler's like, "This is bad.
This is really bad." Because
we're in a tight spot.
Yeah,
right.
Being 1940s Germany, Jojo has been sort of indoctrinated to believe all sorts of wild things about the Jews. So he's like, what on earth do I do about this? Eventually, his curiosity gets the better of him, so he starts trying to talk more and more to what's her name?
But he's like, well, if I can't rat you out, I might as well make you useful somehow. So can you tell me?
I'm going to write a
everything?
tell-all book about Jews, so I need you as my source. And so she's, being
Elsa.
quite a bit older, Elsa, that's her name. Elsa being quite a bit older and recognizing this kid's kind of delusional, just starts screwing with him and telling him all these wild stories about how they live like bats in caves and all this crazy stuff. And so Jojo starts writing this expose, as he calls it. And he's trying to tell Captain K, who's like the German commander in the town, about it. And he's just sort of basically thinks this kid's got a wild imagination and sort of poo-poos him. Jojo and his mom have sort of a exchange over dinner where he's like, oh, Germany's going to win. And she's like, this whole war is pointless. And they get into an argument about it. But slowly, he's still a kid. So he kind of comes around to his mom. And she's trying to encourage him to like live his life and think for himself and all these things. And so Jojo and his imaginary friend is just kind of wrestling with this. And over time, he's finding himself, I said over time, like the third time. Anyway, he's becoming more and more like sort of friends with Elsa upstairs. And it's sort of how would you say, like sort of a antagonistic way at first, but then they gradually start growing on each other. And so, being a 10-year-old little kid and she's a pretty older girl, he's sort of crushing on her a little bit. And he's very distraught when he hears that she has a fiance fighting in the resistance named Nathan. So he sort of, not this one.
Not this one, no.
So he starts writing all these like,
he starts by writing a breakup letter with her.
yep, pretending to be Nathan and super obviously not. So she's just kind of like, what are
She
you
goes
doing?
with it. She humors him
Yep.
for reasons to be explained later.
Let's see. So
And of course, as he's becoming more and more friends with her imaginary friend Hitler's like, "What are you doing?
yeah,
Aren't
what's
you
all
really
this about?
focused on the mission? Don't let her use her mind control rays to warp you. You
Yep.
think for yourself."
Yeah, that's the thing. Thinking for himself. So it comes to a point where the Gestapo, the Germany's secret police, come to the house and be like, "Hey, can we come in?" And so they start inspecting the house, and it's kind of tense. And they managed to outwit the Gestapo by pretending that Elsa, who she probably would have definitely been like
Discovered.
discovered and taken away if she'd hidden in the crawl space. So she pretended to be the older sister Inga because all of her stuff was still there.
And there's enough of a resemblance at her passport photo from 5 years ago that it works.
So Captain K, who's also there, they've discovered like she recited her birth date wrong from the papers, but Captain K sort of let
Let it slide.
So it's kind of implied that he kind of knows what's up and he's, also helping out. However, on the day that the Gestapo arrives, Jojo discovers that his mom has been caught and executed for doing some sort of resistance work.
Yeah,
So he's devastated, obviously. And he sort of vents his anger at Elsa a little bit, but she's, having lost her own family, manages to understand and sort of comfort him because now she's all he has left. So the Russians and the Americans and British are all closing in on the town. And there's sort of this last stand by the German army in this town as they're gradually like taken over. And so there's a big decisive battle. There's old men, young kids, and everybody in between fighting, but all in vain.
And one of his friends from Hitler Youth, actually,
Corky, yeah.
they meet up in the streets during this war. It's like, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm doing great."
Yeah.
But it's been real crazy since Hitler killed himself.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, Hitler killed himself? I suppose he hadn't seen his imaginary friend in a while. So the Americans and the Soviets kind of split the town. And some soldier had put like this small uniform on Jojo and told him to go fight. So he gets mistakenly rounded up by the Soviets for execution of prisoners like they would do. And Captain K is also there. He's like, go take care of your sister, kid. Rips off the uniform and pushes him away. He's like, "Get out of here, Jew." And Jojo's like, "What? No, I'm not a..." And he's like, "Just get out of here." So he manages to escape and get back to Elsa. And he's like, "Oh, crap. The war's over. Elsa doesn't have to hide anymore. Do I tell her the truth that the war's over? Because then she'll leave and I'll be all alone." And so at first he lies to her and says that the Allies lost the war for a little bit, but she eventually catches on. So he writes sort of another fake letter from Nathan, which is actually sort of disguised his own real feelings for Elsa. And then she opens up her crawl space and she's like, "Yeah, Nathan died 2 years ago of tuberculosis." So, so they're kind of made up friends now, and she gets to walk free outside in the middle of the day.
And then Jojo joins
Jojo has
her
a final
after.
confrontation with imaginary friend Hitler, and tells him to screw off and kicks him out the window.
And I can bring it up later.
Yeah. And so one of the things that Jojo's mom liked to do, and she encouraged Jojo to do, and Elsa, was dance. And so one time Jojo asked Elsa what she was going to do, and she got out and she's like, "I'm going to dance." And so as they walk out into the street for the first time, they start dancing, and the movie ends.
She just starts belting out, "Let it go."
Not quite. Not quite. I would have thrown something at the TV if that's how that ended. but that's, in a nutshell, Jojo Rabbit.
Yes.
Now, the movie is a comedy. It's sort of a morbid, like dark comedy.
It is gleefully morbid sometimes.
Yes. Like very flippantly, but the subject matter is obviously very heavy.
Right. It has like style. It has this almost like
It's not
childlike naivety toward it.
Yes.
About it, which is captured well by the character of Jojo trying to process the world events he's living in through both his child's perspective that has been warped by the Hitler Youth Program.
And this movie is really about sort of. It's like in the first Captain America movie, the was it the German doctor's name who was like giving Steve his powers. It's like people forget that the first country the Nazis invaded was their own. So like it's an interesting way, like Nathan said, of sort of this childlike, strangely lighthearted approach that really manages to make accessible the ideas of like what the effects of propaganda and indoctrination and stuff would be on people and how it ultimately led to great suffering.
But in a weird, dark comedy way where the representation of that is this child that has Hitler as his imaginary friend.
Mm-hmm.
And
the war is pretty much all he's ever known.
Yeah, and this contrast between the supportive imaginary friend being freaking the Fuhrer.
Yep.
Right?
And I think one of the main points of the movie... we could talk about it in the truth thing, but
Like,
it's interesting, like, sort of how it's manages to... Because, like, there's other movies that are kind of similar, like, if anybody's ever seen The Book Thief or read the
Boy
book.
in the Striped Pajamas.
Yeah.
Those kind of depressing...
We take a very serious tone, but this movie, it manages to sort of... Because humor is a way to cope with heavy things. And this manages to do it in such a way, I believe, it doesn't go to the level of being like disrespectful or completely flippant about it, because the movie does have serious moments. Like, everything is happy and great until Jojo's mother is found out and executed. And then things are pretty bleak. And then there's sort of another ray of hope when like the Allies liberate the city, basically.
Yeah, I think it's interesting just how casual almost it is. You've got the jaded war vet who wants to be out there fighting but is stuck on office duty, so it's this he's got this given up, I don't care anymore attitude. And there's like kind of, I don't know, there's that kind of just, this is the way things are, throw your hands up and deal with it kind of vibe. It's
also kind of an interesting like window, and like because at this point, like World War II is sort of this big myth, like a mythical event in history that people don't really realize.
A great
the reality
struggle
of it.
between good and evil.
Yeah, people don't really. It's not often people try to look at it from the German people's perspective
and point out how flawed the perspective is. Obviously, in
Right.
fact, part of the humor of the film is how messed up can you be.
Yeah. Because one of the deals too is with like indoctrination and stuff is like, you have Jojo who's like this super enthusiastic kid, like, and at the beginning of the movie things are pretty insulated from the war. Like you have these couple veterans over here who have seen it. It's like, yeah, this is pretty bad. But as far as the home front is concerned, they're just like, everything's going great. We're part of this great country. We're going to do all these wild, cool things. But then slowly over the course of the film, reality begins to seep in. You start seeing some wounded soldiers coming back here and there.
You see the people that are hanged in public for dissenting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the main characters is hanged for dissenting.
Yep.
And it's this whole thing.
And ultimately, the war is not some glorious struggle for, the superior race. It's just like a profound human tragedy. And sort of being able to, looking at it through Jojo's perspective is, it's an interesting angle.
And seeing how gleefully and willingly people dive into it
Yeah.
highlights the tragedy on the German side.
Yep.
How terribly people were led astray.
People were, very much misled, but some of it was definitely willfully. But you still had some in Germany who tried to do the right thing, like obviously represented by Jojo's mom.
And his dad, who was...
Apparently not actually off in the war. He's off, like, also trying to save Jews in some capacity.
I think, didn't they say he had died trying to do that?
Oh, yeah. I forget what exactly happened to his dad. Like, they refer to it, but I'm not remembering it off the top of my head. But yeah, that's some of the cool things about Jojo Rabbit. Also, like, the music choices are interesting because, like, sometimes it's like, the 1940s jazz or whatever, but other times it's just like stuff from like the 60s.
Just like upbeat pop songs in German juxtaposed to all this bleak war stuff.
Yep.
Like, that kind of frames the attitude of, Heil Hitler.
Yeah.
And we're gung-ho about it. But that's the wrong attitude to have when faced with something this bleak and dark. Mm-hmm. And it's that twisting of it that is the dark comedy.
Yeah, it's sort of gives you a window into the cognitive dissonance of Germany during the war.
And I think that might be one of the major things where it's like, as the illusion of his indoctrination comes crumbling around him, there's this cognitive dissonance between what he thinks Jews are and this perfectly nice human person living in his walls, right?
It's like, what are you telling me? They're not strange monsters that want to take over the world. They're actually just people like you and me. What?
Or what he thinks these glorious war heroes are, juxtaposed to this guy who...
damaged, clearly disillusioned man.
Right. He may have once believed in the cause, but now it's just like, cause schmoz. I just want to smoke my cigarette. That was one of my favorite little gags was every time Hitler and him are pacing nervously, Hitler would offering him cigarettes, like, I don't smoke, I'm 10. And it's like, oh, sorry.
It's like, stop offering me cigarettes.
I'm sorry, I smoke when I'm nervous. And it's Hitler saying this. Like, that's part of the humor. It's like this Hitler is kind of the secular equivalent to the devil now, right?
Yeah.
It's like he is one of the few historical figures that can be seen as this guy was evil, right? That is how we understand
But people
him.
forget that people in Germany didn't see him that way.
No,
everybody else sees him for what he was, but
to them he was the friend of the people. Mm-hmm. He was this kid's friend.
The people that lifted them out of the economic just chaos and the humiliation after the First World War, ultimately down a horribly destructive path. Any other things we want to talk about before we get into some analysis? I suppose Riley, you haven't seen it yet, but what are your impressions so far?
I have not. My main question to ponder is where he fits into the Joestar lineage.
Right.
Oh no.
His stand is Hitler.
His stand is Hitler.
Oh boy.
his Zawarudo.
But yes. Yeah, I guess I don't have a whole lot to add other than what you guys have said so far. I find I want to see how the letter writing scenes are framed and delivered. Because that seems like kind of the key moments of JoJo's character are shown through those letters. And so I'd like to see how those are framed and how those are presented.
Writing from the perspective of someone who cares about her is when he starts to A, care about her himself, and B, realize, oh, this is a person that has just a normal person relationship with somebody else. Mm-hmm. Also, one other thing about the title, that at the beginning he had the whole being called Jojo Rabbit thing that wasn't brought up later, but I feel like the whole rabbits are brave because they're so vulnerable,
and they're
brave because they're cunning and can hide, is played out later. He is brave like a rabbit in the way that he hides his friend and helps her escape. And as is his mother and all the people working with, helping the Jews and trying to run a resistance. It's hiding and being secretive and trying to run isn't cowardice, it's bravery, because if they get caught, they're at the mercy of all of the predators out there.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was reflecting on the movie later, I'm like, oh, that's could be how the rabbit theme plays out in the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the main things I was thinking about as I went into it, it was recommended to me by a couple of people. I kind of trust their taste in movies, and I was wondering how that sort of the comedy would work with sort of the serious subject matter, and I think it manages to walk the line pretty dang well.
Right, because it's serious when it needs to be. And it's like, this is how severe things are, but also juxtaposing that with how gung-ho and carefree Jojo is, and how jaded the Captain K is, and how the other characters react.
Mm-hmm.
It's
kind of, the humor also kind of shows just the ridiculousness at the end of the day of like how ridiculous like the Nazi ideology is, like juxtaposed with like the truth.
Because like they have these extreme racist ideas about all these people, when that just holds no water.
Mm-hmm. It's that very act of thinking for himself that Jojo is able to see through all of the lies.
And that was one of my favorite little scenes when they were talking about, the Jews, they can read your mind and manipulate your mind and hypnotize you. And Hitler's like, you think for yourself, you're a strong German boy. His imaginary friend Hitler's like, you're not going to let somebody else control the way you think, are you? And he's like, no, Hitler. And it's like, that was a very...
Nobody's controlling what you think.
Subtle, darkly comedic commentary on what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
It was actually really, really clever. That was one of my favorite little moments.
Yep. Should we get into the analysis?
Suppose.
I suppose we're about there.
So truth. What are truths we can find? Well, actually, ultimately, I think the truth shall set you free is really the main takeaway.
People are people, no matter where they are. And not just in the case with Jojo learning about that Jews are just people, but it's also showing that, no, Nazis were people too. They were utterly, terribly misguided, unfortunate people.
And some people willfully chose to, they wholeheartedly chose to participate in something just horrible and misguided.
And that's tragic.
Out of this power trip. Like you see these older boys that were kind of bullying Jojo, being sent off to the front to fight in the war, and they're all enthusiastic about it.
And later in the movie, they're all coming home, all broken and bloodied.
Yep.
And with a faraway look in their face, like, oh, that's what that was.
Mm-hmm. So the desire to dominate and force one's will upon other peoples at the behest of a fascistic, deranged but charismatic dictator it was just awfully horribly destructive for the country's own people, as well as the victims of the regime. But yeah, it's interesting too. Like when you read about, some of the, like once the Allies got in, like when the war was over and the Allies were occupying Germany, it became clear that there was just varying levels of understanding of what was really going on. Like, people's awareness of the Holocaust, for example, like people were sort of vaguely aware that this stuff was happening, but
like, oh yeah, the Jews go off on a train and we don't see them again. Problem solved. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Or just completely knowing what was happening and choosing to ignore it. This film doesn't really explore that, but it sort of kind of gets into like...
Elsa knows her parents went on the train you don't see people come back from.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't go into it beyond that because it wasn't pertinent to the story beyond that. But that's the reality there.
The harsh reality. So yeah, I think, and that's sort of through Elsa and also his own experiences, Jojo is able to see, and through the urging of his mother, who cares very deeply about him and wants him to have a future and not be so
gung-ho about ideology she doesn't believe and knows he didn't believe 5 years ago.
Yep.
Like they're trying to make him into a soldier they can throw on the front line to be shredded, whereas and he's going to do it with a big dopey smile on his face.
Yep.
And she doesn't want that for her boy.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like that was a part of a thought hadn't finished.
I don't know. Talking about, we did go in.
Oh,
I don't know. I think we made our point.
yeah.
Where it's like this sucked as a time to live. It was a sucky time to live in Germany, no matter who you were.
One thing that I think we can remember today is like, with hindsight, it's easy to see how patently evil and all this stuff is. It's like you were saying, Hitler is the secular devil nowadays. It's just like, when I think evil, I think Nazi. But it happened for a reason. Like, it's not as if, you know, it was some sort of made up conflict and that people were like, yep, we're just going to be the bad guys now. It's like,
he dug them out of a huge recession and gave them ideas of being the greatest country in the world again and all these things, right?
It was a neat little package of lies with a very appetizing exterior. And, you know, hatred against or anti-Semitism wasn't unique to Germany in European history. Like it's a long
in
basically
history,
anywhere
history.
basically anywhere there's been Jews, there's people that hated Jews. But it's just sort of culminated in just the right way to precipitate the Holocaust. Where it's like, are you telling me that it's the Jews here and in every other country in the world that are, you know, out to get us and have caused us this humiliation? Well, we can't have that. Let's follow behind this Hitler guy. Oh yeah, we can fight those dirty French and those dirty Polish and Russians and get away with it. Like, let's go. Let's take over the world.
Japan, stop bombing America. What did you do?
Yeah. So it happened for a reason, and people are capable of awful, awful things. But in the face of great evil, people are also capable of very heroic deeds. And I think this film manages to show that quite well. Not like as starkly per se as, say, the Schindler's List, but
but in a smaller way.
Yeah,
In like a more
digestible
intimate,
and approachable way,
yeah.
like through a child's eyes, as it were. Goodness, what is good in Jojo Rabbit?
Jojo's mom.
Definitely Jojo's mom. Yeah.
There's this really wonderful scene at the dinner table where after they have this political debate, and he tells his mom to run away and to leave him alone, and she goes in the other room and she's like, "You want to talk to your dad? Want to talk to your dad? Okay, I'll please talk to your dad." She goes in the other room, digs ashes out of the fire, smears it on her face like a beard, and comes in with his war coat. It's like, "Son, you didn't listen to your mother. Your mother told me all about what you said.
It's like,
I don't appreciate you talking to my wife like that."
Yeah. She has a good conversation with herself. Like, I yelled at the kid. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, kid. What kind of apology is that? I'm sorry. It was a fun little scene, but like at the beginning, they were sort of, you know, Jojo was going on and on about the glories of Germany, and his mom is just kind of like, oh, this stuff again. And so they have a little argument, and she's like, all right, enough. This table is Switzerland. We're not going to argue at the table. And so she's, you know, it's like, let's eat. And Jojo starts eating, and he notices that his mom isn't eating. And he's like...
And then he knows Elsa's in the house at this point. She's like...
Okay, so she's going with us so she can give Elsa food. He's like, well, I'm feeling... And sort of like his blindness, I guess, to the sacrifice his mother's making. He's like, well, I guess if you're not going to eat, I'm pretty hungry today, so I'm just going to eat both portions of the food. But just kind of showing that, you know, Rosie is her name. She's... you know, sacrificing not just for Jojo, but for Elsa upstairs, and ultimately pays the biggest sacrifice for that. But yeah, definitely she's very good. Captain K in his own way is good.
Particularly right at the end when he's like, I'm about to freaking die, but this kid has a future. This child that we messed up can do something better, so I'm going to save him. At my own expense, which was like, hey, that's a cool last move for you to do, Mr. Captain K, Professor Apathy himself.
Yep. And Jojo himself, I think ultimately the goodness in him wins out.
Right. You have this internal conflict that is literally personified by having Hitler there telling him what to do, and then he should kill this little Jewish girl. But like over the course of the movie, he goes from this highling contest between him and Hitler to kind of debating with him what do they do and should they do anything, and then at the end telling Hitler to literally F off. It's like this really neat representation of growing past his indoctrination. And at the same time, parallel to that, you've got Elsa, who's just trying to survive.
Yes.
But also kind of having fun messing with a little brother of sorts. And then they grow as siblings. And even though at the end, Jojo's kind of crushing hard on her, is like, I know this wouldn't work, like logically speaking, but I do think you're cute.
Yep. And yes, for her part, she's like kind of jaded and really like she's lived a very difficult life.
She's living without much hope. There's not much there. But both from seeing that Jojo can change his mind, and also from
the sacrifice of Rosie, like who encouraged her to like
Mm-hmm.
not give up hope and so
when
forth.
you're free, you'll be able to dance. That the idea of dancing like correlating to freedom. It's like you'll be free of oppression. That both kids eventually become free of Nazi oppression. One is internal, one is external.
Yep. Beauty. What is beautiful about Jojo Rabbit?
It's a really well put together film. There were all these like little details. One thing I noticed like partway through the movie is the focus, the relationship between Jojo and his mom like focuses on their shoes a lot.
Yep.
Jojo's 10 and he can't tie his shoes, and that's an embarrassing.
Kind of relies on his mom.
So his mom will tie his shoes for him.
Occasionally.
Then
mess
there's a
with
couple
him
of
and tie his
scenes
laces
where
together.
like there's that one scene where they're on the stairs, and the way it's framed, you see her shoes prominently, right? Or like when they're walking around, there was like one scene where it's Jojo and there's her shoes. In the scene where he discovers that she's been hanged, the framing of it was very tasteful.
It only showed her shoes.
It only showed her shoes, and you recognize it. And at the end, he tied her shoes because they were undone. But they don't show her face. You know who it is by his reaction and her shoes. And it was just really well put together and really well built up to. And the whole movie, that's just like one example.
Well, because early in the movie, they were sort of walking in the town squares. They were doing errands, and they come across these people who had been hanged for, just being dissidents.
Jojo's
asks, like, what did they do? And she's like, their best. What they could, yeah.
And then later in the movie, she describes like what are you? He asks his mom what she's doing or something, and she goes, "What I can." And then it's not long later that we find her dead, and it was like, oh, that was subtle and coded. I like that.
A lot of the creative choices, considering like the dark subject matter, like a lot of films will go for this sort of faux sepia or like black and white like style, but this movie really focuses on like bright colors and visuals and things, at least at the beginning of the movie, to sort of reflect Jojo's disposition and the way he looks at the world.
And later to juxtapose with just how bleak and dark everything is.
Yep. And then the show like shows like the destruction of like the city. There's just gray rubble everywhere. But as once the Americans and once the Allies take over, like you start seeing the color coming back, like the streets are getting cleaned up. People are starting to try to find a new normal in their lives without the Nazi regime. Old banners and stuff are being torn down and flags are getting ripped up. And the sky is, clear and blue again. It's sort of like Jojo's found a place to put his hope aside from like the sort of Nazi ideal he had been told to believe.
Which I love the detail how in the last confrontation he has with Hitler after he learns he shot himself, that he is bleeding from his head. There is a bullet hole in his head. And so
he's all raggedy and stuff.
This ragged, downtrodden corpse of
like the downfall of the Nazi regime sort of corresponds with Jojo's like realizing the truth thematically.
And it's visually represented how Hitler is both dead to him and dead actually. Visually, there's a lot of like great subtlety going on and great shot
strangely
framing.
Historically accurate.
Good like.
They really did their research.
Except for when like the music kicks in and it's the Beatles singing "I Want to Hold Your Hand" in German.
Yep.
It's like,
yeah. That's right. It was funny. I was like, I know this tune, but why is it in German?
Because the Beatles performed it in German.
Ah, there it is.
I forget where they did, but if you asked Isaac, he'd be able to tell you. Like, bring it up to Isaac when he comes over this weekend.
But it was like down to like the random like little like cobbled together guns that Germany made in the final days. That was sort of the other piece of it too, is it illustrated at the end how like Germany was really throwing her people into the meat grinder at the very end to try to hold on to whatever scraps of this glorious Reich that they had built up for themselves, like old men and boys and women and children and everybody fighting in this war being told never to surrender, when it would have been better for the people if they had surrendered. But it's just out of the selfishness of Hitler.
And even after Hitler gave up, ultimately,
people were trying to carry on when it was clearly pointless.
After he saw it was pointless. So it was,
like he couldn't even face up to his own failure. That's why he ended his own life. But let's see. Unity. I think, the truth will set you free is sort of the theme of the film, I would say.
Yeah.
Learning to think for yourself, I suppose. But and I think it manages to bring those points home well. But I guess anything to add?
Not really here. Any closing thoughts from the guy who hasn't seen it?
Nope.
Probably need to watch it.
I think you would enjoy it.
Yeah, I think you'd like it.
Sounds like it.
I guess with that, I suppose we could wrap things up. Yeah.
I mean, that if we've talked about all there really is to talk about as far as we're concerned, then yeah.
Cool beans. Well, thanks for listening to the Palladium Papists. You can listen to us on Spotify, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts. Please leave a rating to let us know what you think of the show, and follow us on Twitter and Facebook @PalaPapists. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, or suggestions for future episodes, email us at palladiumpapists@gmail.com. And we'll talk to you guys again next week. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.